Happy Friday, everybody. Glad that you're here. Welcome to the next segment, nearly the last segment in this series on the future of work, our Friday at noon Eastern time series of future of work sessions. So glad that you're here. So as you're joining, if you're here live, of course, I know that many of you will be watching this later, and you are just as welcome to watch later as to watch live. And we're glad that you're doing that. But if you're here with us live, tell us, say hello. Tell us where you're from. Get ready to use that comment area in whatever platform you're in, because we want to know who you are, where you're from. Say hello. And you can all do that. As I get ready to introduce my guest today, you already know who she is because you've seen the title. You know she's here. We're going to talk today about learning in the future of work, learning in a hybrid workplace. And to do that, as we wanted to put that on this menu of topics, the first person we thought of was Cindy Huggett. Let me bring her in. Miss Cindy, there she is. And I'm going to introduce you to her officially. But we already have people telling us where they're at. So let's see. Hello from Richmond, Virginia. Heather, one of the members of my team, our team, lives in Richmond, Virginia. And we've got Tupelo, Mississippi, and we've got Santa Barbara. Hello, Don. So I'm sure we have others as well. So yeah, see, there we go. More for Luciano, California. He's been with us before. Welcome back, sir. Yeah, here we go. Wichita Falls, Puerto Rico, Monterrey, Mexico. Happy Friday from Laguna Hills. Lori, that's a pretty good place to say hello from. We've got our guest from our person from the furthest away so far. We've got the UK. We've got St. Lucia, wherever. Nice. Raise your hand if you want to go to St. Lucia. We've got a member of my team here in New Palestine, Indiana. Hello, Marlene. We've got more in Puerto Rico, Houston, Texas, London. We could keep going. We'll put some more up later. India. Yeah, we've got new people furthest distance. Now we've got India, Myanmar. Look at that. We're spanning the globe, Cindy.
Best thing about virtual, it bears down borders.
Hey, let me introduce you all to Cindy officially, and then we'll dive in. Cindy Huggett partners with organizations to create effective virtual training strategies. That's why I said we wanted to have her here. She helps trainers facilitate. I'm going to take off Philip here just because you don't have to all look at Philip. You can see Cindy's name while I continue this introduction. Cindy helps trainers facilitate engaging online classes, teaches designers to create interactive learning virtual programs. She facilitates designs and speaks on topics related to leadership, learning, and technology. She's a past member of the ATD Global Board of Directors. That's a big deal. And she was one of the very first people to ever earn the certification from ATD, which it was at that time was called the Certified Professional in Learning and Performance. She's translated and shared all of that experience in the virtual classroom as an author. 4 books, Virtual Training Tools and Templates. I'm going to shorten them a little bit. Virtual Training Tools and Templates, the Virtual Training Guidebook, Virtual Training Basics, and Implement Live Online Learning. She's a contributor to many industry publications, and today she's our guest.
So excited to be here, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure to have you. So what I'm going to start, if I can get my fingers to work here, I want to start with a question that might be kind of interesting to everybody. Given the work that you do, people might say, oh, things have been awesome for you in the last year or so, which may very well be true. But how has all of this pandemic stuff impacted you and your work? Really more your work. Like, how has it changed what you're up to and doing? Because you were already doing this work, but the world's changing. So how's it impacted you and your work, Cindy?
Yeah, this is a great place to start, Kevin. And, virtual training isn't new. Virtual learning has been around for 20 years plus. Back in the late 90s when we were moving to the virtual classrooms for the first time. And so I got started in the early 2000s, and about 17 years ago, I went out on my own as a consultant. So I was consulting, doing a lot of strategy work, helping organizations figure out their virtual learning strategy, because even 3 years ago, many organizations were deciding, well, which program belongs online, which programs belong in person. So I was partnering with global organizations on their strategy, transitioning classroom trainers to the virtual environment. What's the same? What's different? Helping when we designed a program, converting it from the classroom to online. Well, in the last year and a half, when the entire world didn't have a choice, it wasn't as much about strategy. It was, how do we do this quickly? How do we
do it now?
rapidly pivot to the online classroom? So the organizations who were already doing it had that head start, and they just needed more help. We have more facilitators, more programs. And so a lot of my work was with my current clients, and then everyone needed to do it. And so needless to say, it has been a very busy, very fruitful last 18 plus months. And I love it. I feel like saying, welcome to the party, everyone. We know virtual learning works well. It can be done. Let me help you do that.
Well, I sort of knew the answer to that question already, but I wanted to share it as a way to sort of get past the formality of the introduction so that everyone would say, hey, Cindy's really a person to answer to talk about the things that we're going to talk about today. And I need to say to all of you, if you've got, so now you've got the source. So what questions do you have? What do you want to ask us? Because we're going to bring those in to our conversation, and we hope that you'll do that. And I know, Cindy, that at least certainly on the LinkedIn side, you're connected to this event. And so if people are watching later and you put a question in there, and if we see a question that comes in later on one of the other platforms, we'll get them to you, see if we can get you answers, point you in directions. So my point to everyone is engage. All right. Ask questions, make this yours and not just mine. But that leads me to where I want to go, is sort of like, okay, we got forced to do it. Organizational learning. Well, we were in this place of what's going to be virtual, what's not. Then we're like, oh my goodness, the only thing we can do is virtual. But how would you say, where are we now? And putting your expert predictor hat on, where are we headed? And what's organizational learning going to look like in the future, whatever time frame you want to talk about?
I think that's a question that's on everyone's mind right now, because if we look at what's happening in the world right now, we think we're heading down a path. Okay, return to the office. And in some global locations, that's happening. But there's been some stops and starts. Okay, we're not. Okay, so figuring out what's next for organizational learning in this really volatile, it's difficult to plan type of environment makes for an interesting planning journey. And there's a couple of themes that I'm seeing, Kevin. The first one is for those organizations who really quickly pivoted to virtual learning, they're going back and making the decisions now. What's going to stay that way? Even if we could go back in person, what are we going to keep virtual because we have better reach, or it's more efficient, or for many other reasons like that? The second theme is, well, what should we bring back in person? Are there certain topics that just make sense to do because we have co-located employees, or we have the availability to do that in that geography or under these circumstances? Some organizations are trying to figure out the whole hybrid model. Hybrid in our case, meaning some of your audience members are in person, some are virtual. And I feel like I have to say that because for many years, the word hybrid, especially in university environments, referred to blended learning, referred to that combination of synchronous and asynchronous. But today, in 2021 and 2022, hybrid in the workplace means varying audience, co-located as well as remote audience.
Some of them are physically in physical proximity, and some are not. And today, not a single one of us is in physical proximity to anyone.
Absolutely.
So, it's really interesting. So you raise a couple of questions there in terms of what should be in person or not. I want to get back to that. We had a couple of questions come in. So I want to talk to those. And I want to come back to that, sort of what's your take on what ought to be in person versus what might not be. But before that, Luciano asked the question. I haven't read it. I'll read it with you all. Do you find that people in leadership roles who were never leaders begin with, and now with the pandemic are forced to lead? Are those people having especially difficult time doing it? I guess that's the way to ask the question. Thoughts about
Yes.
that?
Here are my thoughts, because today with a remote workforce, and even if you as the leader are back in the office, most organizations have got remote teams. And so this whole idea of digital communication, the ability to show up on camera, the ability to clearly communicate a message, the ability to connect with somebody over this two-dimensional, in some cases, environment, the ability to decide things like, when are we going to meet versus when can I just send an email or a text, the nuances of that, the nuance of, how do I not violate somebody's privacy if they're working from home and want to keep their private life private, but they're still working from home and on camera, right? There's a whole set of issues around that leaders need to navigate. So those who were not leaders before, maybe getting to know their teams, or leaders who were not very effective at using digital communication tools, all those new hurdles, in addition to just the regular challenges of being a leader. So that's my take on it. What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, I would add a couple things. Yes, and right. A couple things I would add is being a leader is hard, complex. Doing it for the first time is the most difficult transition of your career.
Mm-hmm.
Doing it for the first time when now you're doing it in a virtual world is even harder. So first of all, I would say grant yourself a little grace. All the things that Cindy said are exactly right. And some of the solutions to some of what Cindy said come down to one skill that a lot of leaders aren't very good at, but we especially need to be better at now, which is setting clear expectations and boundaries.
Absolutely.
And that needs to run both directions, both between what do I want from Cindy as my team member and what does Cindy need from me as her boss, right? And so now we got all kinds of questions coming in. Don says, my question is a mirror of Dr. Santini's. Is this a moment for entry and mid-level folks to really shine in their organizations by offering great hybrid learning and participation in hybrid learning? That's a great question for you.
That is. So let's talk about hybrid learning. And I need to be very transparent and tell you that if you would have asked me 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 10 years ago about hybrid, and I've actually written about this in one of my books, my response would have been, don't do it. Because when you have an audience that's in person and you have an audience that is remote, they are getting very different learning experiences. They're processing differently, they're experiencing differently, they're taking in information differently. They're just having really, best way to say it, different experiences. And trying to design well for that type of environment is another set of challenges. We're trying to overcome that. Now, today, the answer is, for many organizations, we need to do it. And interestingly, some organizations are saying, we'll hold hybrid meetings, but we're going to make a deliberate choice not to hold hybrid learning classes. If it's a training class, a learning experience, we'll offer an in-person version of that program for those who may be in the office, and we'll offer a fully online version for those who are remote, because then everyone is equal, everyone has the same tools, everyone has the same playing field, same learning experience. So as an organization, that's something we need to think about. What's going to be your organization's strategy around hybrid? Will you offer two separate programs? Maybe you have the resources for that. Will you stay remote and design really robust learning experiences, or
which might also be blended, asynchronous and synchronous, right? Back to that earlier conversation about the other name for hybrid, right?
Good point. Yep, good point. And are you going to do hybrid? And if so, are you going to do it well? So I think that's the place to start. Ask yourself, what are you trying to do? And especially entry mid-level folks who are just getting started, I'd think about that. Really put some intentional thought around that.
So I'm going to answer Don's question in a slightly different way. I mean,
okay.
Everything you just said is really great. And I read his question slightly differently. So I'm going to take a different stab at it. And Don can decide if one or either of us were helpful or not. I'm taking this as, if I'm an entry or mid-level person, is this the chance for me to really shine by leveraging all of the learning that might be available to me. And so I may be reading that completely wrong, but I'll answer that question anyway, because it's still a good question. And that is absolutely yes. So whether it's hybrid learning or whether it's virtual learning or whether it's free or whether it's paid or whether it's offered by my organization or whether it's not, I absolutely think this is a chance for us to shine and grow and be adaptable and flexible. So you may very well have answered Don's question, but I just answered another question that it made me think of.
Yeah, good.
We're starting to get lots of stuff. I want to go back to Megan's. This is right in your wheelhouse. Looking forward to your thoughts on how you navigate self-guided learning models with the need for immersive or cohort trainings, which is kind of where you were starting to head a minute ago. What are some tips for keeping all audiences engaged, regardless of location, but also have impactful development? This is a straight up trainer question.
It is. How many hours do we have to talk, Kevin? There's probably many layers to this. So a couple of things that stand out to me in Megan's question. One of them, the tips on keeping all audiences engaged, right? It's less about engagement and more about learning, right? So let's take that step back and start with what is it that we need our learners, our audience to walk away with? What's the skill? What's the thing? What's the behavior? What is that result that we're looking for? And then if you know the answer to that question, you can adequately design learning experiences. And it may be that you're asking them to do some things on the job, some workplace assignments. Maybe you're bringing them together in a virtual classroom to collaborate with others, to work with a facilitator. Maybe you're designing a series. The best learning happens over a combination of experiences, not just a one and done, come to a virtual class. But if you're thinking about inside the virtual classroom at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, we're meeting in your virtual classroom platform with a facilitator, and you have some people who are in person and some who are online. Your goal is to equalize that experience. Those people who are in person should all have a mobile device or a laptop where they can respond to the poll questions, or they can collaborate on that whiteboard you have available. And we're assigning remote with an in-person counterpart so that they can buddy up during the training, during the event, to be each other's eyes and ears. So
and beyond, right now, during the live and in the later, both, right?
Yes. So we could, I could keep going, but I think hopefully that gives some ideas, some tips.
And I put it up there, cindyhuggett.com/resources. So, we cannot download Cindy's entire brain in this live, everybody. So we're trying to do a little of that. So a couple of comments. So first of all, Don said he liked both of our answers, right? And I love your other point, Don, and that is, I feel like this is a great moment to define careers, whether our career is in learning and development, or whether wherever our careers. I think, Don, you're exactly right. I think anytime there is massive change, there are challenges and there are opportunities. And I honestly and 100% agree with you, Don, that now is a time of great opportunity if we look at it that way. And on that, I've got to go backward to a comment or a question that came in earlier. And I think I have an answer for it. I got to go find it. Here it is. And the question is, what LinkedIn learning courses can assist us to engage in hybrid working world? I will tell you that you want to go look at the courses, some of the courses by a guy named Michael Gutman, Gutman. I'm actually going to join him on a live, that he's hosting. I'm going to be his guest in a few weeks, but he's done a number of courses that would help you there. If your challenges around how do we engage in meetings and leading meetings, one of my courses about leading virtual meetings might be useful, and those are the first that come to my mind. I'm sure that there are others, and I know that the good folks at LinkedIn Learning are working hard, right, to help all of us in this time. So hopefully that's helpful. And Vasilios, you had another comment. I'll put this up there as a question. What are the skill sets that are beneficial for hybrid learning? And so I'm going to ask this question, Cindy, from the perspective of the learner, not from the trainer. Now and
Thank you.
Tell us if that's wrong, but how do we as learners be effective in a hybrid learning model?
There are several things, and you can see the wheels spinning in my brain at the moment. I believe that in order to be successful as a learner right now, today, is the ability to manage our own distractions, the ability to focus on learning. It is, and for myself included, working remotely, working from home, being surrounded by life, the ability to focus. And that's not to say you're going to ignore a child who needs help getting connected to their virtual, whatever they need to do. But if you know you've got from 10 to 12 on a Tuesday morning class to attend, what are you doing to make that a priority? Are you using the technology tools? Have you set yourself up where you can show up on camera and engage with your audience, with your peers, with your colleagues? Have you closed out of your email and put on your do not disturb or whatever it is you need to do?
I'll tell you what else they got to do.
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
They got to put this in the drawer.
They do.
The research actually shows, everybody, that if this is in your view, if it's in your space, it's distracting you, even if it doesn't beep, buzz, or ring. And so it's here right now because I was using it right before we got on here. I didn't have a chance to, but like, hide it. Totally out of the way. It happens to be at arm's length right now, but for many times me, it is not, because that's what we just do mindlessly is go there. Like 100%. I agree with you, Cindy.
Yeah.
100%.
The discipline of doing that, committing to your development. And if I've had some participants say, but I need to be on Teams because my manager, my team might need me. Find coverage, contract with them, contract with for your learning, for your development. There's ways you can do that.
And I'll tell you something else that we do. And I'm saying this as a leader of a team that's been remote forever. We've been a hybrid team for a decade. I'll tell you this, that everyone on our team, whether it's for learning or whether it's for project work or whatever, is that everyone on the team has the ability, it's by agreement, it's by design, has the ability to block time and say, I'm not available for us. I'm not available on Slack. I'm not going to be checking my email. I'm not going to be doing this because to this story, I'm in training. I'm learning something. I'm working on a project. I'm working on a goal. I'm working on something for Virtual LeaderCon next week. I'll tell you all about that in a second. Like whatever it is. And so everyone on the team knows that now don't talk to Angie right now. She's working on that. She's in a learning session. And we have agreements about, okay, you're not, and what people will say is, if you really, 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 really need me, here's how you get me, whatever that might be. Right. But otherwise, it's not like if there's a fire, like when you smell smoke, you can reach out to me. Otherwise, I'm just not available. So in other words, not only do we need to get rid of the distractions, but we can set stuff up organizationally in a team to make it easier to not even have distractions arise. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So I don't want to miss this. I'm going to move around here a bit. You've got something that you're doing. You do a survey every year. Tell everybody about that survey. I'm going to put that link up because you might have to take a picture of your screen. I can't get it into all of the, channels in the chat, although in the comments, I'll try to do that. I'm going to put it back up there in just a second. Tell people about your survey, what you're up to, and how, if you found this valuable, then you need to go help Cindy. And so what can they do? I'll put it back up in just a second.
I'm so interested, and maybe you are too, in trends. What are we seeing? What's the state of virtual learning around the globe? And so for the past couple of years, I have done a survey the state of virtual training. The last year and the year before are available on my website. It is a very short, about 5-minute anonymous survey that asks you about your organization's use of virtual learning. Everything from what platform do you use? How many participants do you typically have? Do you partner with a producer? Are you incorporating VR and immersive simulations? Are you doing hybrid? And my goal is to just freely share this information, the results. But the more input I get, the better the results are. So this year's survey is open. It will be open for another couple of weeks, still gathering that data, and I'll be pushing out to social media all of the results a little bit later on this year. So that's the link. You can, if you lose it or you want to know more about the survey, send me a note. Send me a note through LinkedIn or Twitter, or find me on my website, cindyhuggett.com. Happy to answer questions. And you can check out last year's and previous year's results in a quick infographic form on my website.
On Facebook or YouTube, if you're on Facebook or YouTube, you could click on the link because I put it in the comments, but our platform does not allow us to do that with LinkedIn. So if you were on LinkedIn, I'm going to put it up again. So if you missed it, you can still grab it. Here it is. So Cindy, here's what I've noticed so far as you were chatting about that. I went back and thought about the questions I was going to ask you, and guess what? Our very wonderful, talented, curious, smart, learning audience has in one way or another asked most of them, not all of them, we're not done yet, but many of those things sort of have naturally come out of the conversation, which is really, really awesome. And oh, by the way, is a really good reminder for those of us that are facilitators of learning, is that we don't have to always carry the ball, because the folks in the room are often right there with us. Sometimes they're ahead of us, and we can rely more on our group than we sometimes remember. That's a leadership lesson, and that's a trainer lesson. I promise you both on that. So I want you to answer this question. We've been talking about hybrid learning. I just want to talk about virtual learning, like straight up virtual learning.
Sure.
Because some people have said, you've heard it before, maybe today, like, well, you just can't do even though it's during the pandemic, like you just can't do virtual learning. Like as soon as this is over, we're going all back because you really can't do virtual learning. What do you say to people when they say virtual learning doesn't work?
So I have a 7-year-old son, and he's in 2nd grade, and he came home from school just earlier this week saying, "Hey, Mama, you know, when you point your finger at somebody and you say that it's not working, do you notice that 3 other fingers are pointing back at you?" And I thought, what a life lesson to learn, because that's what I think of when I think of this question. So what's the reason? If virtual learning isn't working in your mind or in your organization, then what is it? Well, it's usually one of 3 to 4 things. Number one, it wasn't designed well. It wasn't designed for a virtual audience or a virtual classroom. Someone just took the slides that they used in class and dumped them online without making changes, or they took a really interactive program that was designed for 20 people and they moved it online and invited 100 because you can, right? So design is one
they
reason.
Turned it from interactive to being a lecture. Like we could just go right on down the list, right?
That's right. That's right. So number one reason is that. Number two is not upskilling our facilitators. If you have classroom trainers or classroom facilitators, and now they're needing to connect with this online audience, we need to upskill them in the technology and the techniques. My most popular, you asked me earlier, what's been keeping me busy? Facilitation workshops, virtual I do a ton of them to help upskill. And those who've been doing it, let's go beyond the basics. For example, how do you ask a question to guarantee a response? The way you phrase that virtually is different from the way you phrase that online. So that's number two. Number three might be a surprising one, but every year in my survey, this comes up over and over and over again. I ask a question. Those of you who are going to take the survey will see it. What do you wish your organization did differently about virtual learning? You know what the almost number one answer is? My organization does not give me the right tools. We're not using a platform that's designed for appropriate or effective virtual learning. We're trying to use some meeting program or some virtual video conferencing program that doesn't have the features that we need. For example, breakout rooms, the ability to have small group
let's just be
conversation.
clear. I'm going to stop you just for 1 second and let you continue. Or people don't realize that those platforms have those tools and they haven't figured out how to use them. Also a true statement, but go ahead.
That too. But that's it. That goes back to upskilling, not knowing the technology. But my organization wants me to conduct interactive virtual training, but we don't have a platform that does that. We don't want to invest the dollars, the money, or something else. So why does virtual learning not work? Well, let's really think about those reasons. And if it's effectively designed with an engaging facilitator, with participants who are prepared, everyone has the tools they need, it can be so much more successful than in-person learning. We just need to equip our teams to be able to do it.
And let's just be clear, everybody. It's not like every in-person training is engaging, well-designed with excellent facilitators. Let's just be honest, right? I mean, maybe yours is. I got to put this back up here. Michael had made this comment. He's been teaching hybrid teaching since April, and he's teaching job readiness classes for those looking for employment. I just want to give him that's so important, so valuable. Thank you for doing that important work, Michael. We appreciate that very much. And Luciano says, and by the way, someone has put into LinkedIn. Oops, sorry, it got lost here. So thank you for putting in the link in the LinkedIn comments. So now everyone can get it without having to go. We don't have to put it up again. Just go click that link and do Cindy's survey when we're done. Not yet. When we're done.
Thank you.
Luciano says, it works when you have a great trainer and subject knowledge. They need to be patient with people who have such questions. There's no doubt. It's 100% true. So, and now we got people thanking Michael. I love that. See, this is a learning community, right? And I love that in just 31 and a half minutes, we've been able to create that. So thanks to all of you for doing that. That makes this so, I can tell you this, it makes this so much more fun to be on this side of this thing. And I know Cindy feels the same way. Man, we sure appreciate that. Now, I'm going to take a second. We're going to get back to Cindy in a second, but as long as we're there, I mentioned this a minute ago, Virtual LeaderCon. So if you're enjoying this next week, all week long, I'm going to be in this spot, most of it on a totally different platform. And it doesn't, I didn't even spell it right. So I probably should fix that. Virtual LeaderCon. You got to have an I in there, Kevin. Let's do that. virtualleadercon.com. 1 full week, 40 leadership and professional development experts joining me live. You can go to virtualleadercon.com to get all the information, and it's completely free. And oh, by the way, there's going to be some sessions also simulcast here. So like if you're on LinkedIn or YouTube or Facebook, you'll be able to get them simulcast there as well. But go to Virtual LeaderCon, see the calendar, come join us. Cindy, I want to take us a little further. We've been talking about virtual learning and hybrid learning and all that. We've even talked about individual learner stuff. But let's talk about team learning and collaboration. I know that you are also very passionate about collaboration, not just in the learning setting, but in general. So let's talk about that sort of as our last major area for our time together. You want to take that wherever you want to take it.
Sure. Well, a couple things come to mind, Kevin. One is that one of the silver linings of the last 18 months to 2 years is the virtual platforms, the tools that have either been first come out, new tools, new platforms, or the rapid increase in features of our traditional virtual classroom tools. So we've always had virtual whiteboards. That's not new, but the ability to collaborate on deeper levels, we now have tools to do that. So one thing that comes to mind for me, and we think about that trend, we think about the ability, if we're meeting together in a virtual classroom, it should be for collaboration and online, but that can now take place outside of the virtual classroom. It can continue along the conversation as we continue working as teams. So that's one thing that comes to mind. The other thing that comes to mind, and Kevin, I'm sure you saw it, just this week, Rob Cross put out a book on Collaboration Overload. Some really interesting research that he's been doing. He's a professor at a college.
I was going to show the book because I have it, because he was on my podcast. You all can go to remarkablepodcast.com. He was my guest a while back, but I think it went live this week.
Awesome.
Or it's either has or will soon go live. I was going to show you the book, but I can't get to it quickly enough.
Okay, well, it's called Collaboration Overload. And
it's fantastic.
One of the key points is, are we being efficient about our collaboration, or are we just doing collaboration to collaborate? Are we doing it with mindful intention? Could we just have a quick phone call or a quick email or a quick communication to take care of it? Or do we need that? And so being mindful and efficient about it, I think, is super important. I see that in the virtual classroom as well, Kevin.
100%. And now that I've told you all that, I have to tell you that it hasn't gone live yet. I just looked it up. So I can't find the book. And I told you about a podcast episode that hasn't actually happened yet. I think it's actually coming in the next 2-3 weeks, but you want to get a copy of this book.
Anticipate it. It's coming.
Exactly. Remarkablepodcast.com, the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, everybody. So people are going to take your survey. People are going to go to cindyhuggett.com, and they're going to go to cindyhuggett.com/resources. What are they going to find there, Cindy?
They're going to find a ton of recorded webcasts, podcasts, checklists, templates, articles about how to design effective online learning, how to facilitate effective online learning, how to do the back end of it, really practical, tangible resources. And you'll also find a contact form to reach out to me. I work with teams on helping facilitators do this well. Designers, how do you design engaging online learning? I'm here to help.
cindyhuggett.com and cindyhuggett.com/resources. I hope that you'll do that. Last question, Cindy. What's one thing we didn't talk about that you wish we would have? Or a final thought. Either one, or a final thought. Take your pick.
I think we get caught up sometimes in the fancy, what's new, let me try this out. It boils down to being about learners. It boils down to, what do they need to do back on the job, and how can we enable that? How can we equip our teams? And if we keep our learners, we keep that audience in the forefront of our mind, we'll be so much more successful than we would be if we get too caught up in trying to use the latest technology, the latest trend. Let's keep it focused on the learners.
So Alejandra she just says that, right? She says it was the instructor, and you might say, from your perspective, Microsoft Teams might not be the best place to do a 2-week session, but guess what? It's not, at the end of the day, it's about using the tools we've got exceptionally well and having a well-designed session. I'm going back to your 3 points from earlier, having a well-designed session, having a well-prepared and skilled facilitator, and then making it all work by having engaged folks. So I think that's right on. Luciano, I don't think we're going to get to your last question. It's a great question, but we're not going to probably get to that. I'm just acknowledging that. Before we go, though, I want to remind you all, as this whole Future of Work series has been leading to September the 30th. On September the 30th, we're doing a live cast, also not on this platform, but we're doing a live cast where I and my team, especially my co-author Wayne Termel, are going to be joining you to talk about the future of work, what's happening, what's coming, where do we go next, and how do we equip ourselves for all that. And you can learn more about that. It's all free. RemoteLeadershipInstitute.com/livecast is where you can get that. We hope you'll join us there. And Cindy, thank you again so much for being here. It was a pleasure. I knew we were going to have fun, and we did.
Thank you so much for having me, Kevin.
It was a pleasure. Everybody, I hope you have a wonderful day. Now the comments are going to start coming in with all of the final thoughts, with the thank yous and all that. And the thank yous aren't to me. It was the honor. The thank yous are to Cindy and to all of you for making this a great live event. And thank you so much for being here, everybody. And we'll be back next. I'll be here on these platforms next week with Virtual LeaderCon, doing a small snippet for you each day. Hope you'll join us there, or just go to virtualleadercon.com to join us in general, and cindyhuggett.com. Make sure you go there as well. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thanks everyone.